What's up, everybody? I know there's probably not many people excited about this in the room, but baseball's back. Yes, yes. Cavs are looking solid. That's good. Yes. Hey, welcome. My name is Curtis Teel. I'm one of our campus ministers, the Twinsburg, Macedonia campus minister. Glad you're here hanging out with us this morning. Especially want to say welcome if you're hanging out with us at mochurch.tv. Go ahead, grab your Bibles and open up to Romans chapter 12. If you don't have a Bible that you feel like you could read and understand, one to call your own, grab one of the paperbacks. There's paperbacks at the ends of the rows. Pass those down. If you're hanging out with us online, open up another page on your web browser. Go to BibleGateway.com. We'll be using the NIV version today. We're going to talk about several scriptures before we actually get to Romans chapter 12. So I would love for you to, like in your notes or with your phones, snag a picture of the screen kind of as we're going through it. Because I got kind of a little journey I want us to go on as we get to today's principle. We're in the third of a 4-week series that we're calling Great Expectations, where we're looking at relationship principles, but we're specifically honing in even more on marriages. And there's lots of really cool stuff that we've learned over the last couple weeks. I want to introduce you. This is my sister. This is a picture of my sister. Her name's Kelsey, and this is her fiance now. Fiance, got to get used to saying that. Fiance, Garrett. Recently, the turn of the year, these two, they got engaged. And so now they're planning their wedding. They both live in Tennessee. And so their wedding is going to be in Tennessee later this year. And everybody's really excited about that. And so it's been a focus of a lot of the conversation in, like the households. My wife and I, our family, we go to dinner just about every Tuesday with my parents. My parents live in the area, and so we go out and we have dinner together. And the focus of the conversation has been the planning of their wedding and the different things that they've been knocking out over just the last couple weeks, and one of the big, so the things they've been talking about, they've been knocking out the venue. They got the venue picked. They got the food they're going to have, the DJ, like the theme, the colors, all that good stuff. And my 3 daughters are going to be flower girls in the wedding, and so that's pretty cool. Yeah, excited about that. It's going to be, cute, I guess. Sounds like I'm supposed to go, oh, when I hear that. And so while we were sitting down at dinner, they were talking about all this stuff. And my wife and my mom started talking about the different flower girl dresses that are possibilities and how they're narrowed down. And they started, listing out the other things that they've gotten knocked off that they need to have planned. And eventually, I realized there's one important detail that hasn't been discussed. And so I thought to ask. I said, "Hey, who's she having officiate her wedding?" Because it's going to be in Tennessee, and with the way marriage works, you got to be a licensed person to officiate weddings. You got to be a licensed minister, like in that state, to officiate a wedding. And so I asked. I knew it wasn't me, and I asked. I said, "Hey, who are they planning to have officiate the wedding?" And both my parents kind of turned and looked at me with concern, and also a little bit of confusion. And he said, "What do you mean he's doing the wedding?" And so my dad finally chimed in. And he said, "Well, Curtis, her expectation is that you will perform the wedding." And I said, "Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm expecting to be sitting in the audience." And Dad said, "Well, it sounds like she better clear that up." And it's like, yeah, sounds like she probably could. So for just a moment, to kind of help set us up for where we're going, I would like to invite you into imagining the scenario with me of exactly how this would play out if we just kind of left this subject untouched between the two of us. My sister is very good at her use of sarcasm. She is extremely, extremely good at sarcasm. And so here's how the conversation would go. It's the wedding day, because that's how far this would make it. It's the wedding day, and everybody's jazzed, really excited for the wedding, and maybe they're sitting bride on one side, bride and family on one side, and groom side of the family on the other, or maybe they'll do the thing where it's like, there are no sides. Once we're married, we're all family, so just sit wherever. And I'd sit towards the front row, and I'd sit close to the aisle so I can get good pictures of my girls when they come down, and my sister, she's coming down the aisle, and we'd be sitting there, and eventually, my sister would send for somebody to come get me, and I'd go to the back room, and we'd have this conversation. And my sister would say, and I quote, she would go, "Curtis, it's time." And I would say, "Oh, I know. We've got barbecue and dancing to get to. What are we waiting for?" And she would say, "The minister." And I would go, Oh, where is he? Because that wouldn't be enough to clue me in, right? Oh, well, where is he? And she would go, it's you. And I'd say, it's me. She goes, yeah, you're my brother and a minister. Who else would I have officiate my wedding? To which I would say, you're my sister. You've been planning this for a year, and you didn't think to mention to me you'd like me to do your wedding? And she would go, I would like you to do my wedding. And we would from there go in and truly perform a shotgun wedding, where it would just kind of be like from the hip, all right, let's do this. Now here's the thing. This illustrates the point of what we've been talking about and kind of the whole premise of the series. And the very first week we talked about that we each, kind of metaphorically, we carry around with us an invisible box that we fill with hopes, dreams, and desires about what our relationship, specifically what our marriage, will be like. And it's things like who's going to do chores around the house, things like how we'll spend our time, how even things like conflict resolution, how you're going to handle conflict. And all of these things go into what we feel like, what we hope, what we dream, what we desire our relationship to be. And what's difficult about this, though, is we don't often take time to figure out personally what are our hopes, goals, and dreams, and desires for our marriage. And where that really becomes difficult is that often does not let our significant other know what our hopes, dreams, and desires are, and therefore they cannot help fulfill those things. A lot of times we don't even take the time to figure out exactly what we put in our own hopes, dreams, and desires box, so we can't even have a conversation about it. But what we tend to do is we fill up this box with hopes, dreams, and desires, whether we realize it or not. And then as we move deeper into a significant relationship with somebody, what we do is we tend to take our box and hand them to the significant other and say, here, make them come true. But for our significant other, for that person we hand the box to them, it does not feel like we are handing them hopes, dreams, and desires. To them, it feels like we are handing them a box of expectations. To them, it feels like the bar has been set. And if you do not measure up, if you do not help these things come true, then I am not happy in the relationship and I want out. And so that's what we talked about the first week. And at the end of the first week, we gave you a worksheet, which you could still get out in the lobby, to help us determine. What we wanted you to do was to go home and figure out for yourself what are your hopes, dreams, and desires for your relationship. And we told you to not talk about them with your significant other, to go home to figure that out. And then the second week we came back, and last week Dan, our lead minister, was here, and he talked to us that, and we learned that marriages, the happiest marriages, the best marriages, the happiest couples approach their relationship as a submission competition. As a race to the back of the line, how you can serve each other. That these happier couples, they choose to look at the relationship as I owe him or I owe her everything, and I expect absolutely nothing in return. And so last week we asked you to go home and to figure out what's in your significant other's box. And we made sure to tell you, we told you to make sure you find the right time to sit down and talk about this, where you could have some time to really begin unpacking what each of your hopes, dreams, and desires are in that box. And we know, and I don't expect that you've unpacked everything. And if you haven't started, I hope maybe this week you will. You'll go home and you'll begin that conversation. And I don't expect that you've unpacked it all yet, but I hope that maybe that conversation has begun in your house. Now what I want to do is I kind of want to help us move in the direction, or start a conversation, or continue the conversation maybe, and how we can move in the direction of having the best marriage possible. How can we approach this and make this relationship, not just our marriages, but our relationship with our kids, our relationship with our parents, even our relationship with our friends and neighbors and bosses, because I think this cool thing that I feel like I have learned over the last year, and it's been all these different things that just kind of happened to come together at just the right time, that I feel like I've learned this principle, and I kind of just want to share it with you this morning. So go with me for a little bit as I just kind of share with you some things that I feel like God has really been challenging me with over the last year or so. And I'm not sure exactly on the timeline of how all this comes together, but all these things have kind of added up to help teach me something that I think is really going to help our relationships. Some time ago, I committed to spending some time in the morning reading a chapter out of the book of Proverbs in our Bible every single day. I'm definitely not perfect with it, but I'm significantly better now than I was a year ago. Essentially, the book of Proverbs in the Bible is a collection of a bunch of wise sayings. It's really a lot of stuff we would agree with, and we kind of have our own ways of saying them. And I would read a chapter out of the book a day and then memorize one verse that I felt like was really important for something I was facing at the time. And so I just want to share some of these with you because a theme began to pop out to me that I really felt challenged with. So here's some examples. Proverbs 10:4 in the Bible. It says this. It says, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. That's not earth-shattering to us. We get that, right? Like, if you're going to work hard, if you're going to be diligent, if you're going to be intentional, if you're going to have plans, if you're going to have goals, and you work at them, it'll bring you wealth. But if you're lazy, it'll lead to poverty. Proverbs 12:11 says this. It says, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Once again, it's this idea of hard work. If you put in the work, there will be a payoff, and if not, well, then that payoff's not going to be there. Another verse, Proverbs 14:23, all hard work brings profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Now, this is one where we kind of have our own proverb for, right? And many of you could probably fill in this blank, right? Talk is, right. Actions speak louder than, right. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Man, hard work, I hear that, okay? But when you talk about it, that doesn't do you any good. Actions speak louder than words. This theme of hard work really began to pop up and stick out to me, and it was always connected to like wealth, being successful. And then Proverbs 13:4 says this, lazy people want much but get little, but those who work hard will prosper. Once again, here we are again. And here's the thing. These are just the verses that this theme pops up in Proverbs, from Proverbs 10 to Proverbs 14. And that's not even all of them. We skipped several of them. So you see, like, this is a big theme that pops up, and it pops up a lot because I think it's a really big deal. Okay? If you want the wealth, you're going to have to put in the hard work. And when I would read these things and I would memorize them about a year ago, I always found myself connecting wealth to physical wealth. The idea of having lots of money, or the idea of being able to provide for my family. That's just naturally what I connected it to. But I realized, as I was reading it, that that's not what the author always connects it to. And so I began to think, well, what if all of a sudden I think of prospering? Or what if all of a sudden I start thinking about wealth? Instead of just physical things, money, being able to provide for my family, but what if I thought about wealth in terms of my relationships? What if I thought about wealth in terms of love? What if I thought about having wealth in terms of how good is my marriage? How good are the relationships in my life? What about if I thought about having wealth in terms of my relationship with my daughters? And then Proverbs 13:4 becomes something completely different. Right? Then Curtis Teel's version of Proverbs 13:4 becomes this. It says, lazy people want a lot out of their relationships, but they get little. Those who work hard will prosper. Those who work hard will prosper. Lazy people want a lot out of their relationships, but they get little. And those who work hard will prosper. Now, once again, I'm not sure exactly the timeline of how all these things ended up coinciding with each other, but I started learning all these things, and then I want to share them just because I feel like they've helped my marriage. So just after this, that's just after I started kind of thinking about this. Last year, about this time, my wife and I got to go on a one-day getaway to Berlin, Ohio. Round of applause if any of you love Amish country. Yes. Okay. I like it because I like it because it's fun. It's nice and quiet. You just kind of get away. It's nice and simple. There's a restaurant out there. It's called Boyd and Worthman's. It reminds me so much of my grandma's cooking, so I really miss that. And so I love getting to go out there with her. And we also really enjoy it because there's about an hour and 15-minute drive to get there. And we love road tripping with each other. And I am sure that this was something in my wife's hopes, dreams, and desires box. One of the things I was really looking forward to in this particular trip was listening to a podcast of a sermon from a buddy of mine back home. And I know my wife, she just loves that. You know, she's like, when she thinks of our marriage, one of her hopes, dreams, and desires is like, man, when we get in the car, I hope he wants to listen to another sermon. You know, like Kelly Clarkson, who? Give me sermon. So I was really looking forward to this because it was one of my buddies, and it was in a series. The series title was Lies That Christians Believe. And the message title was, It's Okay to Have an Okay Marriage. In other words, the premise being like, it's not okay to have just an okay marriage. And I was really excited about it because I knew his wife was going to be speaking with him. And it's just a really good, phenomenal leader. And so we started playing this podcast. He and his wife, Lindsay, got up there and started talking. And as he was talking, some points really began to hit home with me. Because as he's sharing some different things, I thought about my own marriage, my own relationship with my wife, Abby. And as he was talking, I was kind of evaluating my own marriage, and I said, you know, my marriage is okay. In fact, I would say my marriage is even better than okay. I would say my marriage is good. In fact, most days, I would say my marriage is really good. But as I thought and I listened to what he was saying, I had to come to terms with, but I'm not trying like he's trying. Like, we're not trying at our marriage the way they're trying. And not meaning like doing the specific things that they are doing, just meaning like I came to the point where I realized like I'm not pursuing my wife in the way that he's pursuing his wife. I'm not learning about her hopes, dreams, and desires the way that he is. I'm not serving my wife the way that he's serving his. Essentially, when it comes to my marriage, I had to come to terms, I'm not giving my best. In fact, I don't know that I'm even really trying. And so this question that weekend, that night we got to get away, and then that following weekend, and then really just over the next couple of months, I just couldn't shake this question. And the question was, what if I tried? What if I tried as much as I could? What about when it comes to my relationship with Abby, when it comes to my marriage, what if I gave it all I got? What if I tried to make it as good as it could possibly be? So one of the things we wanted to do on that one-night getaway was we wanted to write some goals. We wanted to write some goals for 2017. We also wanted to write some lifetime goals. So as long as either Abby or I are alive, what are some things that we want to accomplish? And so I want to share two of my lifetime ones with you this morning. I've shared these with you before, but just in case, it's one of our goals, Abby and I's number one lifetime goal, is that Abby and I want to be around each other even when our girls are grown and gone. That one of these days, we know it's not going to be our whole family like in our house, at least we hope and pray, right? You know, but that one of these days, it's going to be just Abby and I again. And when that day comes, we want to be around each other. Our second goal is that when our girls grow up, that we want our girls to want to be around us even when they have other options. Like one of these days, they're going to have friends. They're going to be spending time with other people. And not that they'll spend all their time with us, but that even when they have other options of places to go and hang out and spend their time, that they will want to spend some time with mom and dad. Those are two lifetime goals that we have. And you know what I realized as I drove home, because we were going to write those goals out, and it's something that we can see so that we can continue to pursue, I realized that's going to take hard work. That's going to take a lot of work. I realized that. That can't just passively happen. That's going to have to be something that I try for. And it's going to have to be something that I try my best at. Now, something else that began to happen for me last year is I have always loved working out. I've always loved it. But recently, I've been introduced to something that really takes hard work to the next level. So for about 2 or 3 years now, at the same time, my wife, Abby, has been telling me that she thinks that I should do CrossFit. CrossFit is something I have very little exposure to, but it's something she's a bunch of teachers that she works with do CrossFit, and she knows I love to be active, and she knows I love to be competitive, and she would tell me, like, man, from what I hear them talking about, I really think that's these two things. I really think you should do CrossFit. Well, because I've got such little exposure to it, I would always talk myself out of it. My exposure to CrossFit has been my crazy friend on social media who just posts things all the time. I knew two things. I knew two things about CrossFit. Number one is they run a lot, and I hate to run, right? Like, you're not chasing me, I'm not running, It's that simple. The second thing is that they do tons of pull-ups. It was always videos of him on a pull-up bar doing a crazy amount of pull-ups. And I don't mean just like, pull-up. I mean, he's going like this, he's just flying through these things. I know, looked like a crazy man. By round of applause, anybody remember the Presidential Fitness Awards from like elementary school? Okay, when I didn't get the Presidential Award for Fitness, it was because of my freaking pull-ups. Like, I couldn't do them. And if this is competitive, I'm going to go in there and get embarrassed by these guys. So I'd always talk myself out of going to CrossFit. Well, our anniversary of last year, my wife bought me a Groupon. They were basically 2 months of free classes at CrossFit. And she handed it off to me and said, here, these are already paid for. Don't waste this money. It was a pretty good motivation to go check it out, And so I went in, I show up, and it wasn't anything like what I thought it was going to be like. I really thought they were just going to kind of throw me out to pasture and just watch me. Like, I'll stand in the corner laughing at the new guy. But they usually have a coach that can kind of walk you through and teach you what you need to know, and really cool things that I think maybe will pop up from time to time, but we've got to stay focused this morning. And one of the things that I've learned, one of the first things that you learn, is that they have different styles, they have different types of workout. And my favorite workout is one that's called an AMRAP. AMRAP, and that's what it stands for. It's an acronym, and it stands for as many rounds as possible. The idea is that you're given a time limit. It's not always 8 minutes. Sometimes it can be 3 minutes. Sometimes it can be 20 or 30 minutes. But you do, in that time period, as many rounds as you possibly can. And so here's an example of what what a simple AMRAP would be. Simple workout. Basically, they would go 10, 9, 8, they'd count you down, 3, 2, 1, and they'd say go. And when they say go, you would start doing the workout. And so you'd start and you'd do 10 push-ups. You get down on the floor, you do your 10 push-ups. We know what push-ups are. And then once you finish those 10 push-ups, you'd go right in and you do 20 sit-ups. We know what sit-ups are. You do your 20 sit-ups. And then you get to the next thing. So then you go to the next thing, 25 air squats. I don't know why they call them air squats, other than just being honest, sometimes you're pushing air. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why they call them air squats. I don't know. But that's what you would do. And so it's ready, set, go. You do 10 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, 25 air squats. And then once you finish it, that's one round. And then you go back to the top. And you start again, 10 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, 25 air squats, and that's 2 rounds. And whoever, at the end of 8 minutes, has completed the most number of rounds or reps, the most number of rounds, wins. That's how they get the competitive part of it. Now, there's been some really cool things that I've learned about how you approach, how you set goals, and how you approach AMRAP that I think, that I know can help us get the most out of our relationships, get the most out of our marriages. And the first is that in any AMRAP, there are going to be moves that you are strong at, you're going to have strengths, and you're going to have weaknesses. And so a good example for this, in this workout, my weakness would actually be the push-ups. You're not going to get too many rounds in before I have to break up those 10 push-ups together. Instead of pumping out all 10, I have to pump out 5, kind of shake my arms out, and then pump out the second 5 before I move on to the sit-ups and the air squats. That would be my weakness. My strength in this workout would be the air squats, because, let's be honest. The air squats, No, the air squats, that would be where I know that I could pump all 25 of those out consecutively and kind of catch my breath before I go back into the next round. And so it helps for you to know your strengths and your weaknesses so that you can make a plan accordingly. The second thing about how you approach an AMRAP is that there's a time limit. You want to try and set a goal for the number of rounds you want to complete, and then figure out how many rounds per minute that means you're going to do. And so you set that as your goal, and then you try and push that so that you can get better and be more competitive. And then the last thing is that there's something really special that happens towards the end of the time. When there's about a minute and a half left, usually the coach will yell out, 90 seconds! And you can almost see the pace of the room pick up because everybody knows, like, man, I'm dog tired, I'm exhausted, but it's almost over. I'm almost there. I can push out a couple more reps here. I can get a little bit higher score. And people, even some that are working out, will kind of call out and encourage each other. Come on, push. You're almost there. You can do it. Keep going. Don't you quit on me. And because of that camaraderie that's there, things are achieved and goals are exceeded because they're there to push each other. And in a really good workout, time runs out. People collapse to the floor, began taking deep breaths, and then start walking around high-fiving each other because of this community of pushing each other to be the best and do the best that you possibly can. And this is such a good metaphor. And those three things are such a good way, that they serve as a metaphor, such a good way to approach our relationships. So I can't help but link this idea, this as many rounds as possible, to something that a guy named Paul writes in our Bibles. A guy named Paul, who was a follower of Jesus, he writes a letter to the church in Rome, and this is what he says in Romans 12, verse 18. He says, look, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Now, at this point in time, in this specific verse, what he's referencing is forgiveness. This idea of, like, when there's potential conflict in your relationships. As much as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. But when you look at this verse in context of in context of where it arrives in the letter, Paul's actually speaking about relationships in general. In fact, if you have the paperback Bibles open, or if you are in your Bible app and you're using the NIV version, there's a heading over this section, over this paragraph of verses. What's that section's heading? Anybody? Love in action. That's right. That's right. So what Paul's talking about here is in relationships in general, and what he's saying is, look, when it comes to love being in action, when it comes to you actually experiencing, when it comes to you actually giving love, as much as it depends on you, you do it. As much as it depends on you, you do this. You put love into action. So what I want to do is I want to hijack the CrossFit acronym AMRAP, and I want to make it our own. And I want you to go home, and in your relationships, what I want you to do is I want you to approach them from an am-dom perspective. That's right, I'm telling you, I want you to go home and I want you to am-dom your spouse. But here's the deal. I want you to start approaching, we need to start approaching our relationships from this standpoint, from saying, you know what? I don't care. I know this is hard work. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of fighting for this. But you know what? By the end of the day, I'm going to be able to say that as much as it depends on me, I did what I could to make this awesome. As much as it depends on me, I did my best to be a dad today. As much as it depends on me, I did my best to be a hardworking employee. As much as it depends on me, I walked into the classroom today and I was the best teacher that I could be. When it comes to my marriage, as much as it depends on me, I'm going to make my marriage awesome. And those same ways, that same plan that you have to approach an AMRAP will be the same way that you approach to AMDOM a relationship. And the first is that in that every relationship, every marriage, you will have strengths and weaknesses. It helps to know them. In every relationship, you will have strengths and weaknesses. It helps to know them. And here's the deal. When it comes to showing my wife, Abby, love, her top two love languages, the way that she feels love the most, are words of affirmation and quality time. My strength in that is words of affirmation. I'm a preacher. I'm a storyteller. I love to tell stories. I love to learn about words. That's like something super nerdy about me. I love to learn about words. And so words of affirmation could be a strength of mine. It is a strength of mine if I remember to use them. It's not enough for me to think them. I have to make sure to share them with her. And so words of affirmation could be, or it is a strength of mine when I remember to use it. My weakness in this is quality time. This may be hard for you to imagine, but even as a young boy, I have a very difficult time sitting still. And so when we get a chance to kind of sit down and talk, even when I can remember to kind of sit still and focus in on what it is I'm doing rather than being bouncing around all over the place, I have a hard time shutting my mind down. My mind's constantly running. And so even when I'm sitting down and can be engaged in a conversation with her, my mind very easily wanders to something else I need to do or something else that's going on. And so I really have to make a conscious effort when I know we're going to get a chance for some quality time to sit down and not only to focus in, to stop my mind and focus in, to listen and engage with what she's saying. And it helps me to understand not only how she feels love through words of affirmation and quality time, but to understand it's a weakness of mine to make sure that I shut my mind off and focus in on what she's saying. So the question I want you to think through is, what are some strengths and weaknesses of your personality? And how do they match up with your spouse's hopes, dreams, and desires? Are you great at getting chores done around the house? Are you great at getting chores done around the house, but you don't ever sit down and focus in on listening to how your spouse's day went? Like those type of things we need to work through. You see, in an AMRAP, you can't just skip parts of the workout that you're not good at just to get to the parts that you are good at. The same way, you can't not show love to your spouse in a way that she feels it just because it's more difficult for you. We can't just show love in the ways that's easy for us because it's easy for us. We have to do what's difficult, or we have to show them the way that they feel love, even if it is difficult for us. And one of the books that kind of helps go through this, and we recommend this a lot in our relationship series, is a book by a guy named Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages. And he talks about how we all give and receive love through 5 different senses, essentially, is what he's going through, with physical touch, gifts, words of affirmation, quality time, and acts of service. And so my challenge for you is to figure out what your significant other's love language is, find it out, and then rep it out. Find out what their love language is, and then show them that love language. I mean, the second thing as a way to approach our relationship, and this one has been huge for me, is the time limit that they put on an AMRAP. In an AMRAP, you have a certain amount of time to get as much done as you possibly can. That sounds a whole lot like our day, right? That sounds a whole lot like our day. And here's the deal. We all wish for more time, but it's really difficult for us to make that. So instead, make the most of the time that you've been given. We got to start making the most of the time that we've been given. An AMRAP doesn't always have to be a lot of time. Some AMRAPs are only 3 minutes. It's a straight sprint. You have 3 minutes. Get as much done as you possibly can. And that's what it's about. Make the most of the time that you do have. And so what this led me to do was to divide up my day. And I realized that I have about 15, maybe 30 minutes with Abby before my wife has to leave for work in the morning. And so I could lay in bed, kind of passively scroll through Facebook, catch up on what happened after the night, or Instagram, or check some emails. Or I could begin making the most of that time by getting up and making her breakfast so that she has food to help have a strong start to her day. And I tell you what, for a very long time, I chose the passive thing, to just lay in bed. But I realized, man, if I want to give my best, what's 15 minutes? What's getting out of bed 15 minutes earlier to help my wife have a strong start to the day? You know what, as much as it depends on me, let's do this. And so then I realized once I get home from work, I get home about 5:30, depending on if I have any evening meetings. I get home about 5:30, and I realize that I have about 2 to 2.5 hours before my girls go to bed. My daughters go to bed, and that includes dinner. That 2.5 hours includes dinner and the bedtime routine to try and get them in bed. Yeah, which can sometimes be a lot longer. But I was like 2.5 hours, man, that's nothing. Man, that's nothing. That goes quick. It doesn't always feel like it goes quick, especially when I'm trying to do something else like scroll through Facebook or watch some Netflix show or watch what's on TV. But I realize, man, there are people that are just a little bit further down the line, like have grown kids, they have kids graduating, and they keep telling me 18 years goes like this. I do not want to get 18 years down the road and wished I would have had more dance parties, game nights, or fort building. And so instead, man, you know what, as much as it depends on me, I'm going to be a killer dad. And so backing in the driveway has kind of become like when that coach yells, 90 seconds. And I realized, man, I'm almost there. I'm dog tired, but I can do this for 2.5 hours. I can be present with my daughters. And then the last thing where, man, this has meant so much to me is the community that comes with, and how the community is important in getting the best out of our relationships. Bobby Powell is the name of our student minister at our Twinsburg, Macedonia campus. And recently, something happened with him and I when we were working out together, and I want him to share this story with you real quick, and then I'll be back to close this out. So check out this video real fast.
Hey, what's up, guys? So in CrossFit, one of the workouts, there's a machine called the assault bike, and I suck at it. I'm not very good at it whatsoever. In fact, I consider it my worst enemy. It's like biking, but harder, hence the name assault bike. But one day when I first started a while back, Curtis and I were going to the gym and stuff and working out together. And one of the workouts had the assault bike in it. So at the very end of the workout, everybody was done with their assault bike except for poor little Bobby, because Bobby can't freaking bike. Well, I started to black out. Like, no joke, not even kidding. Like, I was going as hard as I could, and I started to, like, kind of, the walls started to close in on me. And at one point, I started to fall off the bike. But luckily, because everybody had already finished, poor Bob was by himself, Curtis was right there cheering me on. And so as I was falling off the bike, I actually hit his chest, and he pushed me back on the bike so I can finish the workout. Kind of an embarrassing story, but also a really cool bro moment, if you know what I mean. So, yeah.
Cool bro moment, but I didn't really know what was happening, to be honest with you. We had to bike 50 calories to end this workout, and I'm standing there and I'm cheering him on, and I'm looking at the meter as it's going up, and it gets to 38, and he like falls into me, and I thought he was done. So I picked him up, like, no, man, you gotta finish, you know. I didn't know he was blacking out, you know. I approached it, but he got back on the bike and he kept riding, and he made it to the end of the workout. And here's the deal, because you can do more when you've got people cheering for you. You can. You can do more when you have people cheering for you. So here's the deal. You've got to surround yourself with people who are going to cheer for you and for your marriage. People are going to cheer for you and for your spouse. Because see, here's what's normal right now. What's normal is that we surround ourselves with people who are going to be complaining about what's not done in our marriages. And typically we listen in and chime in with the things that we feel too. But what we need to be doing is surrounding ourselves with friends who are going to cheer us on, who are going to cheer us on in loving our spouse, telling us and helping us to be able to do even more than we thought possible within our relationship. Because here's the deal, man, relationships in general are tough. They're difficult. And relationships in general. And so that means our marriages, they experience that same, if not more, level of difficulty. And our culture surrounds us with models that say, hey, look, when things get tough, get out, split, move on to something else. But you need to have people around you who are going to say, don't you quit. Every rep counts. Keep going. Dig deep. You can do this. Man, and so that's why we make such a big deal about getting your butt into a Mo group. Our groups of people that meet in people's home throughout the week, 6 to 12. It's 6 to 12 people that meet in someone's home to encourage each other. To encourage each other to dig deep, to rep it out. Man, if you've been checking us out online, man, this is a great opportunity to encourage you to say, man, come in. Meet us face to face. Let's start doing this stuff together, because you can do more when you have people cheering for you. We need people who are going to cheer for us and for our spouse. We've got to surround ourselves with people who will cheer for you and for your spouse. Here's the deal. When it comes to our relationship, we all have these boxes of hopes, dreams, and desires. And God tells us in several different places throughout the Bible that something special happens within us and something special happens within our relationship when we run in pursuit of each other. When we say, you know what, as much as it depends on me, I'm going to do what I can to help make my marriage awesome. And here's the deal with this kind of thing, someone's got to start it. And so you start it. You take the responsibility for it. You say, you know what, as much as it depends on me, I'm going to do that this week. So let's do that and just do what we can to help make our marriage as best as it can possibly, and any relationship that we have, really. So let's pray. God, we love you. God, thank you so much for loving us. God, thanks for this principle. Thanks for this idea. God, thanks for community. God, that can continue us to keep going when we're just dog-tired and exhausted. God, help us to remember this week as we're coming home, as we're getting ready to enter into a conversation that could potentially be an argument or something like that. God, to remember what little time we have and to not give up and to make the most of those opportunities to love each other, God. To say that as much as it depends on me, I'm going to do what I can to help make my marriage awesome. God, it's in your Son's holy and awesome name we pray. Amen.